worry. I know that you were kind of like, uh-oh, what's going on here? But no, you've got it. You've mastered it.
Thank you so much, Laffy. We'll be talking
Absolutely.
soon. All right.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And to my...
Now, the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn presents the Green News Report.
The Oroville Dam, the nation's tallest just north of Sacramento, now at record levels. Its emergency spillway in danger of failing and unleashing uncontrolled floodwaters on towns below.
California dodges a bullet for the moment at Oroville Dam.
This is a wake-up call that we've got deferred maintenance needs that literally put people's lives at risk.
U.S. not prepared for climate impacts on infrastructure. Judge rejects tribe's request to halt Dakota Access Pipeline construction. Plus,
do not be in a position where you may find yourself in front of a fire because you won't survive it.
Extreme heat brings extreme fire danger to Australia.
All of those stories and Desi with a cold straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Do you believe in science? Because I do.
Republican congressman versus 10-year-old girl at town hall meeting.
I do support an all of the above energy strategy, and I do think coal is an important part of that.
10-year-old girl winning. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, I know we've got a lot going on today. I know you're fighting that cold.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, up in the Dakotas, bad news for the Native Americans fighting the pipeline up there.
Yes, in yet another blow to Native American tribes, a federal judge has rejected a request by the Standing Rock Sioux Tribe and the Cheyenne River Sioux Tribe for a temporary injunction to halt construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline near their reservations in North Dakota, which the tribes say threatens their sacred sites and water supply. That same judge will hear the tribe's broader lawsuit later this month. Meanwhile, it looks like California has dodged a bullet for now. The threat of a breach at the Oroville Dam in north central California, the tallest dam in the United States, has eased. That's according to state officials. But a mandatory evacuation on Sunday for nearly 200,000 residents below the dam remains in effect. After 5 years of historic drought, a series of storms have filled the reservoir above capacity for the first time in its 50-year history. Emergency water releases to reduce pressure on the dam have seriously damaged its two spillways, which now threatens to undermine the entire structure's integrity.
Yeah, I think the key there is for now. With rains coming in, this is still a very precarious situation.
Yes, it is. And there's a short window of opportunity to make emergency repairs before more storms and the spring snowmelt arrive. That's according to the acting director of the State Department of Water Resources, Bill Croyle.
We're working to really dig down into the reservoir and move as much water out of that reservoir, and so we have space for the storms that we expect to come in, as well as the snow runoff later this spring.
Environmental advocacy group Friends of the River and the Sierra Club had warned the Bush administration and the state about this exact scenario occurring today. They did that 12 years ago, but the state water agencies were reluctant to pay the estimated $100 million price tag for the upgrades, so federal regulators didn't require them. In an interview on the broadcast, Friends of the River Executive Director Eric Wesselman urged that once this crisis has passed, it's time to address long-standing infrastructure issues.
Take these lessons learned and start taking action to shore up our infrastructure to make sure that communities are protected and people are protected, as well as the rivers and the fish and wildlife that call them home, that were just blown out by these massive releases out of Oroville.
You know, I'm really tired of these folks, these environmentalists and so forth, giving warnings about these things, being ignored, and then years later, once it's too late, being proven right.
And speaking of advance warning, climate change also plays a role, not just lurching California between the extremes of drought to deluge, but also because warmer California winters mean much of this precipitation is falling as rain, not snow. And that's also impacting the state's billion-dollar commercial salmon fishing industry.
Because if it was snow as opposed to rain, it wouldn't fall all at once, or at least it wouldn't fill up the reservoir all at once.
Right. Meanwhile, it's summer down under, and Australia is again facing a record heat wave and catastrophic fire danger, with fire officials warning conditions for the next week are similar to, if not worse than, the conditions that led to the deadly catastrophic bushfires in 2009. New South Wales Deputy Fire Commissioner Rob Rogers warned residents in affected areas to just leave.
The simple message to the community in those areas particularly affected by catastrophic fire conditions is do not be in a position where you may find yourself in front of a fire because you won't survive it.
And a new report from climate tracking group Carbon Brief concludes that based on current observed trends, the risk of megafires like those in Australia is projected to increase around the world as the climate warms.
Well, it's starting to seem like this whole climate change thing may not be a hoax by the Chinese after all. I don't know, just looking at evidence, but, ignore me. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to, please check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Don't forget, you can download our reports anytime via Stitcher, TuneIn, or iTunes. Find us and follow us and share us on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
I hate to be needy, selfish and greedy, but please pay attention to me.
This has been the Green News Report on the top of the hour on the Progressive Voices channel on TuneIn.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
President Trump's embattled National Security Advisor, General Michael Flynn, stepping down Monday night in a firestorm of criticism after misleading Vice President Mike Pence and others about his conversations with the Russian ambassador to the United States. An official telling CNN the Justice Department warned the White House last month that Flynn discussed sanctions with the Russian ambassador in December before Trump was sworn in, despite repeated denials, a move that could have broken the law. Acting Attorney General Sally Yates informed the Trump administration prior to being fired that General Flynn was vulnerable to potential blackmail.
Oh, my God.
In his resignation letter, Flynn conceding that he inadvertently briefed the vice president-elect and others with incomplete information, but falling short of admitting he lied. Despite reporting by the Washington Post that the sanctions on Russia were a main topic of conversation between Flynn and the ambassador.
According to two officials that we spoke to who have been briefed on this, it was, as they described it, a main topic of the discussion. It wasn't something that Kislyak maybe threw out at the end or anything like that.
With pressure mounting on the White House on Monday afternoon, Counselor Kellyanne Conway said the president supported Flynn.
General Flynn does enjoy the full confidence of the president.
An hour later, a different message from the White House press secretary. The president was evaluating the situation. President Trump refusing to answer questions
Do you have confidence in Michael Flynn, Mr. President?
about his controversial advisor.
What exactly will you be evaluating with Michael Flynn?
We still don't know what the president knew and when he knew it. In a statement, Democrat Adam Schiff accusing the administration of not being forthcoming about who was aware of Flynn's conversations with the ambassador and whether he was acting on the instructions of the president or any other officials or with their knowledge. Democrats now calling for an immediate classified briefing into the situation, writing, "We in Congress need to know who authorized his actions, permitted them, and continued to let him have access to our most sensitive national security information despite knowing these risks."
Yes, I would like to know the answer to that. I would like to know all these answers to all these questions. Happy Valentine's Day, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. Whether or not you're in love, you're going to love what's going on. You're going to love it. Because the 4 years of Trump, they're not going to be 4 years. So, Coach in Indiana, I still remember our bet. Just saying. But, today is the day to fall in love with the news because it's spectacular. Although, if you have any sort of I don't know, back issues, neck issues, be very, very forewarned because I got whiplash and I am perfectly healthy. But, a month ago, Sally Yates warns the White House that they are open to Russian blackmail. She is fired. She is fired, not Flynn. She is fired. And then yesterday, Kellyanne Conway, oh, yes, the president, fully supports Michael Flynn. He enjoys the full support of, President Trump's, little hands between his groin and squeeze. He has the full support there. And then an hour later, you find out that Spicer is, well, we're going to look at it. We're evaluating. We'll let you know. We'll get back to you. And then there's a thing with Flynn. Flynn says, I am not resigning, and nor do I expect to be fired. And then 2 minutes later, Flynn resigns. I'm like, woo, 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 woo. Wow. It was today we're going to talk to people who have been there, done that. I reached out to Malcolm Nance because this audience requests him. You actually buy. It's like a Freebird or something. He's like the most requested person. So I reached out to Stephanie. I reached out to a mama, and I said, "Give me your contacts." And she said, "Fine. Don't threaten me. I got, I'll do. So I said, all right, well then I'll appear on your little podcast, Naked and Drunk, for you if you give me the contacts. And so, like we were in the CIA or something, like I was Michael Flynn making deals with Russia. I made a deal with Miss Miller, no relation to Stephen Miller, Stephanie Miller, and so she gave me the contact from Malcolm, who I reached out to, and he said, absolutely, yes. So we're going to talk to him in just a few minutes. And, if you don't know who Malcolm Nance is, he's an Arabic-speaking naval intelligence, counterterrorism, and intelligence officer. And he specializes in the Middle East. He's a combat veteran. He taught SEER school, survival of evasion, resistance, and escape. He taught SEER school, and he's also an author. He spent 35 years in the field, in combat intelligence. He covert, clandestine, anti, and counterterrorism support to the National Intelligence Agency. And he just wrote a book. I mean, he's written a lot of books. Defeating ISIS is one of them. The Terrorists in Iraq is another. He's got so many books. The guy's prolific. But his latest book is called The Plot to Hack America, and it's so on point that you just could not talk to him. And then at 5 o'clock, I was watching this press conference with Sean Spicer, who's laying all the blame at the foot of the White House Counsel. The White House Counsel, a guy you never heard of. But anyway, the White House Counsel for the Nixon administration was John Dean, and he's also a dear friend. I mean, I've known John Dean for probably 15, 20 years now. It's crazy. So I reached out to John. John is very, very busy. I believe he's writing another book, and so I thought I would talk to him today because remember John Dean wrote that book on the authoritarian personality. Remember that? And he also happened to have been White House Counsel. This guy, Doug McGahn, is the White House counsel currently. And Sean Spicer today in that press conference was blaming Doug McGahn for everything that happened with Flynn. Now, I just want you to know that this entire press conference today was one big giant lie because the dossier, does everybody remember the dossier? The dossier that was done by what Donald Trump said, it's just some opponents and, I hate them and you shouldn't believe them and blah, blah, blah. And
not going into Ukraine, okay?
This is him saying, okay, this is for later, okay? For later. But let's just go do a quick timeline before we talk to Malcolm Nance so that your brain will be completely and wholly wrapped around what happened here. The dossier that was put out by an MI6 former counterintelligence guy or intelligence guy named Christopher Steele, who is, I don't know, still in hiding. Maybe Malcolm Nance knows something about it. Not that I expect that he would tell me. Why would I want to know or need to know? But it is curious that, he's somehow missing and, from his house. He's not there. But back in the day, the Republicans who were anti-Trump, they hired this company, Fusion, to do this opposition research against Trump. The Republicans did. And then after Donald Trump became the Republican nominee, as you know, the Democrats said, we'll continue to pay you. And then once they decided not to pay for any more opposition research with regard to Donald Trump, Christopher Steele kept going. He kept going with his partner, who was also an intelligence officer. Make a long story short, the dossier was released. It was 35 unbelievable pages. Most people didn't get past the first page because it had salacious details about Donald Trump and his sexual preferences having to do with golden showers. and prostitutes in Russia, in a hotel, on a bed, where the former President Obama and Michelle Obama had slept. It's very weird. So, but if you kept on going, if you just said, all right, I'll just do a quick one here and then I'll be right back to the document. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And you put the Lubriderm down. Then you kept reading and you realized what was in these 35 pages. Okay, so what happened? What happened, the dossier alleges that the Trump campaign made a secret deal with Russia where Donald Trump agreed to sideline the issue of Republican intervention in Ukraine. Now, you remember the Republican National Committee's platform was changed. This was way before Donald Trump was President Trump. So this isn't December, okay? This is back in July of 2016. Paul Manafort was still the campaign manager. Paul Manafort was a lobbyist lobbying on behalf of Viktor Yanukovych from Ukraine, except he forgot to register as a foreign lobbyist, which is illegal. But back in that day, Manafort was still Donald Trump's campaign manager, and we don't know who, but a change was made to the Republican Party's platform on their Ukraine policy. And that change fits with the dossier's assertion that the Trump campaign agreed to soften U.S. support for Ukraine in exchange for the Kremlin releasing damaging documents about Hillary Clinton to WikiLeaks. Okay? So this predates all this that happened in December with Flynn on the phone and blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot more that happened with Flynn. But we're still up to Manafort. So at the Republican National Convention, the original draft on Ukraine said that the United States would send, quote, lethal weapons to the Ukrainian army to fend off Russian aggression. But after the Trump campaign inserted itself, the lethal weapons line was softened significantly. It was changed to, America will provide appropriate assistance. Now, Donald Trump then hit the TV and said he didn't even believe that that Putin was in Ukraine. And then he said, Crimea wanted to be part of Russia. Remember all this?
So you understand, he's not going to go into Ukraine. All right, you can mark it down, you can put it down, you can take it anywhere you want.
He's already there, isn't he?
Okay, well, he's there in a certain way, but I'm not there. You have Obama there. The people of Crimea, from what I've heard, would rather be with Russia than where they were.
So when I said, believe me, Russia's not going into Ukraine, all right? They're not going into Ukraine. The person said, but they're already in Ukraine. I said, yeah, well, that was 2 years ago. I mean, you want to go back? You want to have World War III to get it back? That was during Obama's watch.
Okay.
Our president is not strong.
We could do this all day. Okay, so this all happens in July of 2016. That's when the platform is changed. Okay. Now, the circumstances around the change have never been explained. Nobody will take responsibility for doing it, but the Diana Denman, she was the original amendment's author, and she said that the language change was orchestrated by two national security experts sent to sit in on the committee meeting on behalf of the Trump campaign. One of the Trump campaign representatives present at the meeting is a guy named J.D. Jordan. He has since denied intervening in the changing of the platform, and he denied that Trump or Manafort were involved in the language change. But the Republican National Committee members present at the meeting, they confirmed it definitely came from the Trump staffers. Okay. Now, the altered Ukraine policy amendment that included softer language was included in the GOP platform. All right. Now, in August, that was July. In August, the New York Times reported details about the Trump campaign manager at the time, Paul Manafort, and his involvement with Ukraine. They reported that the Ukrainian leader at the time, Viktor Yanukovych, that his pro-Russia political party had earmarked $12.7 million for Paul Manafort for his work that he did on behalf of Viktor Yanukovych and Ukraine from 2007 to 2012. That's 5 long years. And, of course, Manafort denied he ever collected the money. But 5 days after the New York Times reports this, August 19th, for reasons that we still aren't clear about, Manafort resigned as Trump's campaign manager, giving birth to Kellyanne Conway. because she's only been there since August, okay? But this dossier alleges that Russia's President Vladimir Putin became concerned when Yanukovych informed him on August 16th, 2 days after the New York Times report was published, about the kickback payments being funneled to Manafort, and it was 3 days before Manafort resigned from the Trump campaign. Okay, so Manafort's now gone. So that's the first person that got beaten down by the press in the Trump campaign for dealing with Russia, softening language, whatever, making deals with Russia. That's what the dossier alleges. Okay. Michael Flynn, the former head of the DIA, who was fired by James Clapper, by the way, is now Trump's national security advisor. But before this, Flynn was paid by the Kremlin. He was actually on the Kremlin's payroll. He spoke at that gala in December 2015 and is believed to have regularly communicated with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. before Trump was sworn in. What does the dossier say about this? It says a Kremlin official involved in U.S. relations said that Russia attempted to cultivate U.S. political figures by, quote, funding indirectly their recent visits to Moscow. Now, you know that photo that we've seen a million times of the dinner, this photo here, if you could put this up on the screen, everybody knows this photo now, of Flynn sitting next to Putin at a celebration of RT, Russian television's 10th anniversary. And of course, at the table is Michael Flynn on the phone right here. I wonder if he's talking to Trump. No, that's not it. The picture that's on my screen. Yeah. And then, of course, here is Jill Stein sitting there. And we never understood what Jill Stein was doing there. Well, if you read the dossier, you do know what Jill Stein was doing there, because the dossier says that Russia was attempting to cultivate U.S. political figures by funding indirectly their recent visits to Moscow. The dossier alleges, quote, a delegation from Lyndon LaRouche, presidential candidate Jill Stein of the Green Party, Trump foreign policy advisor Carter Page, and former DIA director Michael Flynn. And that's exactly who's at that dinner. That's exactly who's sitting in that picture. And the dossier goes on to say that the effort to cultivate these figures had been, quote, successful in terms of outcomes. Yeah, you know, you really need to get past the salacious parts. Anyway, Flynn, in December 2015, Flynn retired. He was fired from the DIA, and he went directly to Moscow to this event. And he later told the Washington Post that he had been paid to speak at the gala where he was photographed. Lawmakers, Democratic lawmakers, are now calling on the DOD to investigate whether Flynn ran afoul of the U.S. Constitution by accepting money from the Kremlin. And since the dinner in Moscow, Flynn has been so friendly to Russia. He toes this Russia-friendly line that's very out of line with the Republicans. Don't you remember? Barack Obama actually spoke to this. It was an amazing thing. I mean, this is what he said.
And then you got the Donald, who just last week went on Russian state television to talk down our military and to curry favor with Vladimir Putin. He loves this guy. Loves this guy. Think about what's happened to the Republican Party. Right? They used to be opposed to Russia and authoritarianism and fighting for freedom and fighting for democracy. And now their nominee is out there praising a guy, saying he's a strong leader because he invades smaller countries, jails his opponents, controls the press, and drives his economy into a long recession.
Okay, so remember, this was a break with the Republican position on Russia, but Flynn is the first one to do this stuff, right? Okay, so in one of Flynn's appearances on Russian television in October of 2015, the headline was, former DIA chief Michael Flynn says rise of ISIS was a willful decision of the U.S. government. So Flynn is trashing the U.S. government and telling Putin that ISIS is our fault. Our fault. It's an amazing. Anyway, Politico reported that Flynn recommended to Trump that he support the ascension of Montenegro. Now, why does this matter? It really doesn't. It's a small Balkan nation, but this was to signal to Russia that they would be, against Russia on a small Balkan nation, right? It would throw everybody off, just like Nikki Haley went to the UN the other day, remember? And she said, this invasion again of Putin into Ukraine, it will not stand. This was also to deflect from this story, to make it seem like the Trump administration is very strong on Russia and very anti-invasion of Ukraine, and Crimea, although Trump has said he's not even invading there. And if he is invading there, it's in a certain way. And by the way, Crimea wants to be part of Russia. So anyway, then Flynn and Mike Pence, who initially denied that Flynn had spoken to the Russian ambassador Kislyak, who's a really good-looking guy. You ever see him? Oh, stunning. But anyway, they said they never talked about sanctions on these calls, but the counterintelligence officials told the New York Times that they have transcripts of the conversations, that the sanctions were discussed. They were the main topic of discussion. And Flynn backtracked on his denial, said, well, now I don't recall. The dossier also talks about another Trump campaign person, Carter Page, a former investment banker with Merrill Lynch. He was the earliest foreign policy advisor to Trump, and Page also served as an advisor on key transactions for Russian state-owned energy giant Gazprom. And then he left he mysteriously leaves the Trump campaign, and he enters into some deal with Gazprom. Okay, he gets paid like billions of dollars. Anyway. There are three people now. There's Carter Page, there's Paul Manafort, and now Flynn, all doing the bidding of Vladimir Putin on behalf of the Trump campaign and now the Trump administration. He made the deal with Rosneft, just so I'm right. This is just all so bizarre and just so heinous. And then, of course, we were hacked by the Russians, and everyone knows that. And the NSA has said that. They briefed Donald Trump on it. Donald Trump denied they briefed him on it. He was briefed on it. And so we're left wondering, is the president insane? Or is he just a puppet for Putin? Either way, it's extraordinarily dangerous. We'll take a break here. When we come back, we'll reach out to Malcolm Nance. As I said, he is a naval intelligence, counterterrorism, and intelligence officer who specializes in this area, and find out what he thinks is really going on. 27 after.
Clear for takeoff. Randi Rhodes Air Force. Air Force. RandiRhodes.com.
Now that Trump's on his way to the White House, how long do you think it's going to take him and his Wall Street cronies to completely wreck our economy? This Trump administration is greedy, full of avarice, and awful, and the damage they're going to do to the economy will become legend. They are going to make the financial crisis of 2008 look like a pool party. And once again, working class Americans, you're going to get soaked. And that's why now more than ever, it's time to diversify your investment portfolio. Gold's low correlation with stocks and bonds can help you in times of uncertainty. Just call my friends at ITM Trading today, get a free gold kit, and learn why gold survives every government, every currency, and every economic crisis. Call ITM Trading at 1-888-OWN-GOLD for guidance from their precious metals experts. They've helped tens of thousands of people navigate this market, and they have the best reputation in this industry. So call 1-888-OWN-GOLD, 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1818. That was the day that abolitionist Frederick Douglass chose to celebrate his birthday. He could not be sure of the exact date of his birth because he was born into slavery. He escaped from slavery and became one of the leading black writers and orators for the cause of abolition. After the Civil War, he continued to speak and write, demanding justice for African Americans and working people. For example, in 1871, he penned an an article against increasing demands for cheap labor. He wrote, "Cheap labor is a phrase that has no cheering music for the masses. Those who demand it and seek to acquire it have but little sympathy with common humanity. It is the cry of the few against the many. When we inquire who are the men who are continually vociferating for cheap labor, we find the rich and powerful, the crafty and scheming, those who live by the sweat of other men's faces, and who have no intention of cheapening labor by adding themselves to the laboring forces of society. It is the deceitful cry of the fortunate against the unfortunate. Labor is a noble word and expresses a noble idea. Today, we still face a demand for ever cheaper labor. Business leaders and their political friends fight against efforts to raise the minimum wage. From 2011 to 2015, 8 states scaled back their prevailing wage laws, 19 reduced pensions, and 15 eroded collective bargaining rights. As these attacks on working people grow, it seems that Frederick Douglass's reminder that labor is a noble word is needed now more than ever.
We plant the food, we drive the cab, we load the ship.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
For a commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience, visit randyrhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
He was co-opted by Vladimir Putin. And that means that he bought into and embraced the dictatorial ideology that was done by a spy master of the KGB. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, there'd be treason trials at this point. But I'd like to bring one point up. Why? Because long ago, there was a guy named Yuri Bezmenov, a KGB officer, and he wrote, "This is who the KGB targeted for recruitment. Egocentric people who lack moral principles, who are either too greedy or who suffer from exaggerated self-importance. These are the people KGB wants and finds easiest to recruit."
That's Malcolm Nance, by the way, former Arabic-speaking naval intelligence, counterterrorism, and intelligence officer specializing in the Middle East. He is a combat veteran, taught Sears School, Survival, Evasion, Resistance, and Escape. He's a historian. He's an author, 35 years in the field and combat intelligence activity, including both covert and clandestine anti- and counterterrorism support to national intelligence agencies. And I'm thrilled to virtually meet you, Malcolm Nance. Thank you. Thank you. You're awesome, I got to say.
Hello, Randy. Good to meet another vet.
Well, yeah. Oh, thank you. You are like requested by my audience. It's crazy. It's like you're like Stairway to Heaven or play Freebird. It's like, get Malcolm Nance. I'm like, okay. So anyway, Malcolm, this is crazy. This is just so off the hook. I know you've been following this story since Donald Trump said at a press conference, the Russians, you should hack and you should release these documents, and you felt that was, a bizarre statement from any American, let alone a presidential candidate. And then it just spiraled out of control until we find out, the dossier that was written by Chris Steele. You don't happen to know Chris Steele from Fusion, do you? Yeah,
No, I don't know Chris Steele. I had read his memo actually as early October when David Korn called me to consult about his article.
Yeah, he's gone missing, and a guy in your area of expertise is to go missing, to have to leave your own house. That scares the bejesus out of me. But and so
he's in a country hotel in the Cotswolds right now in England, and it's some little cheery hotel with pink floral couches. So that's his way of disappearing.
I hope he's not in a bathrobe. Somebody's going to snap a photo and put that all over Twitter.
Well, can I just say one thing, Randy?
Yes, please.
Actually, in fact, my investigations and analysis, and that's what my book, Plot to Hack America, is. It's an analysis. Started when I was writing another book that's coming out later this year called Hacking ISIS. And that was, we started that book in February of last year. And we noticed while going through ISIS hacking operations that 2 of them were extremely sophisticated. And it was a hack of French television 5 TV Cinq in France, and the German Bundestag, the German parliament. And ISIS photos and flags were left all over their websites. But in fact, they were Russian intelligence pretending to be ISIS.
Oh, my God.
And so when I heard the DNC hack had occurred in late March, we realized in April when CrowdStrike, the cybersecurity company, identified the entities that had done it, these were the exact same two entities that had hacked TV5 and the German parliament.
Ugh.
And so from there, that's when I started very carefully following the Russian hack. Although my background's in Middle East intelligence, when I came in the Cold War, everyone was trained in Soviet, Russian, KGB counterintelligence. The Russians were everywhere. I worked in the Middle East, Libya, Syria, Yemen, Sudan, wherever, Iraq, of course, the Russians and the KGB were there. So it was very easy to extrapolate from that experience that this was a Russian intelligence operation to attack the United States.
And obviously, the NSA had warned the White House that that it was Russia that was behind the hacks, and that they not only had hacked into the DNC but GOP too, and also voter information. And they, this Trump campaign denied it all along. Why would they? I mean, why was he talking so nice about, Putin to begin with? Whatever happened to Carter Page? Whatever happened to Paul Manafort? And now Michael Flynn? Coincidence?
Well, for those who actually see me on MSNBC, they'll know that my favorite counterintelligence phrase, I call it Nance's Law, is coincidence takes a lot of planning. And that is a very, very old intelligence dictum. There is no coincidences here. What we're seeing is a lifelong yearning by Donald Trump, starting back in the 80s, where he approached the Soviets, he approached the Russians, of wanting to do business in Russia and seeing it as this untapped pool of money that he could exploit. When the Soviet Union fell, he saw billions upon hundreds of billions of dollars of Russian assets, many sold and liquidated by Vladimir Putin himself, come to New York City and buy up real estate. Mm-hmm. In fact, the FSB actually ran agents, a cell of agents in New York City as high-level realtors. A lot of the people Trump was dealing with were ex-FSB KGB officers.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's the same organization.
FSB and KGB, yeah.
Same thing.
Yeah, we understand that. But there was some story about pensions and funneling money that way. What do you know about that?
Well, I don't know much about the pensions. You're talking about Russian pensions or American pensions?
I'm talking about, the tenants of Donald Trump in these Trump buildings. They somehow received money from Russia. They just also happen to live in Trump Towers, in Miami, and Trump Towers.
Yeah, there's no really solid reporting on that. That's pretty much in the rumor intelligence category. But the things that are solid are way more frightening than pensions coming to tenants.
Okay, so tell me what this audience needs to know. I mean, I watched Sean Spicer today dump this all at the feet of the White House counsel, who is somehow MIA. But this predates Flynn's phone call. So this has been going on for the whole campaign.
Well, yeah. As a matter of fact, and this goes back to the fundamental question about this campaign. I've been hammering this since July 25th, which is the day that I ran into MSNBC and said, hey, the nation has been attacked through a large-scale cybersecurity operation against the fundamental tenets of American democracy, which is our electoral process.
Yeah.
But it goes back to when Trump, he wanted money, and he seemed to have been very interested in Russia. And then when he went to the Miss Universe pageant in 2013, it was like Katie bar the door. They threw oligarchs, multi-billionaires. One family has a palace 3 times the size of Versailles. These are not people who have $1 billion. These are families that own $100, $200 billion. Trump saw them. They sponsored him at Miss Universe, and he became obsessed with Vladimir Putin's fealty, to being, wanting to be friends with Vladimir Putin, and they saw an asset. And that clip that you played at the beginning, where I talk about Yuri Bezmenov, seeing that they recruit the KGB, and Vladimir Putin, by the way, former KGB officer, director of the KGB, the FSB, just as it transitioned. This man is a spy master. He sees human intelligence targets and he exploits them through weaknesses. Donald Trump was clearly a colorful American who had influence, who had money, and they must have seen him as an easy mark to flip. And then when he decided to run for president, somehow, and this is the least reported thing in the media, when did Donald Trump adopt the Kremlin's ideology? Between 2013 and 2015. Who spoke to him? What did he read? Why did he seem to believe the Kremlin's worldview of the end of NATO, the end of the European Union, the end of liberal democracy, and the rise of authoritarianism and white supremacy in the United States became a more preferable ideology than liberal democratic policies in the United States? It's utterly fascinating. But the only thing I can say is, as an former intelligence officer, is this man was co-opted by Russian intelligence and was co-opted by the shiny object of money, and they played him just like every other asset that they've ever turned. Except Donald Trump was an unwitting asset until July 27th, when he said, Russia, if you're listening, please release Hillary Clinton's emails. That means he became aware Russia was working in his interest, and he became an active, witting asset of Russian intelligence.
Do you think this is why he sidled up to Carter Page and Flynn and Manafort?
Yeah. Well, Carter Page was a young guy, used to work for the oil companies. Who, if you read anything about him, no one in Russia knew who this man was. But he came onto the Trump team and said, essentially said that he was a big player in Russian oil.
Yeah, he was the foreign policy advisor, the early foreign.
Right. And he was sent, supposedly according to the Steele memos, he was sent to Russia in July of 2016 with a message to Igor Sechin, the Russian Rosneft CEO of one of the largest oil companies in Russia, that if sanctions will be lifted against Russia if President Trump wins.
Right.
Now, I saw that report in September, or actually late August of 2016, and my first thought was that report comes from one of our allied intelligence agencies, and that is an intercept of a telephone call, because it had high levels of detail, as if they were listening to one side of a phone conversation. NSA, our national security agency, cannot do that without a warrant. But the Germans can, the French can, the Ukrainians can, and these people were going over there and making promises. Then came in Paul Manafort, who was, as dirty as they come. I mean, this is a guy who had made millions creating anti-NATO protests in Crimea a year before the Russians seized Crimea. So he literally helped weaken the Ukraine's defenses against invasion. I mean, anywhere else, that would be treason. That's up against the wall stuff. And there are written documents of this man receiving unidentified large quantities of money.
Yeah, the New York Times reported it as $12.7 million. He denies that he ever received it. But here's a little detail. And you being, somebody that's been involved in government, for a really long time should know this is true, that Paul Manafort never registered as a foreign lobbyist, and yet he's lobbying a foreign nation and advising them to, to stand down and let Russian take. And then Yanukovych, flees and goes to Russia. I mean, it's funny, but sometimes, you get somebody because of their tax returns. Well, in this case, Manafort is easily gotten if somebody was interested because he failed to register as a foreign lobbyist.
Absolutely.
So I don't understand why that's never been,
Well, as you know, in October of 2016, the Justice Department, the FBI, finally got the FISA court, right? The Federal Intelligence Surveillance Act court, which is the secret court that issues warrants for people who may be involved in espionage.
Right.
Okay? And that means that allows the United States government to use all of the assets of the government and the assets from our foreign intelligence allies, which is most likely where this started. We're working overseas, and we get information that an American citizen has done a crime, and they put 10 binders of material on the table. We can't touch those binders until that court order is in our hands. And then it becomes evidence.
And check this out. I mean, this is so sickening to me. Sally Yates, tried to tell the White House what was on those tapes. She tried to explain to them that the Flynn is blackmailable now. We have these transcripts, and Sally Yates was fired, and she was the only one with the authority in the government to sign off on a FISA warrant.
Right. Absolutely.
I think that's why they went after her.
I've said this a number of times on MSNBC. I just said it again this morning.
Yeah.
It's not the cover-up. It's not the cover-up is the crime.
Right.
That's from the old Nixon White House.
Right.
The cover-up is the crime. The things that they do, if they are actively working against it, if they find out that they are stopping the FBI's counterintelligence division from carrying out this investigation, or they are hobbling this investigation in any way, slow walking it or lying, then we have right now I believe we have a national security crisis of unprecedented magnitude. Anything that they've accused Hillary Clinton of is a grandmother who couldn't use email is nowhere near the two events that have occurred. Potentially people, and I'm sorry, I will go there, potentially Russian agents or spies in the White House or a president who has cleaved to Russian ideology out of fealty to a foreign leader, as opposed, not to mention, possibly exposing an entire dining room full of people to top secret code word information.
Oh my God! What did you think when you saw that? And there's another photo too. I mean, this is just details.
Well,
but there's a photo of some lock bag. I don't even know what that is. That can't be the football, can it?
The football.
That is the football.
Yeah.
And the key is in it in the presence of people without security clearances.
Oh, well, you're thinking of a classified carry bag. That's a lock bag you're thinking of.
Yeah.
And that's different. That's not the football.
Okay.
The football is always in the hands of a commissioned officer who is always at the elbow, who is always near the President of the United States. He, the young Air Force officer, was, taking pictures of people with it. Just wrong. Guy needs to be brought back to Air Force headquarters. You were Air Force, you know that.
Yes.
Air Force OSI needs to be having a long talk with him because we don't know. Was he influenced by the people in the room? Did someone offer him money to identify himself? We don't know. So he needs to come off that duty.
He does. And just for this reason, I can now point him out. I could pick him out in a lineup. I now know who he is. I know his name. And all those people taking photos and at the table where there's papers spread out in the open air patio.
And they're claiming that was not classified information, that had nothing to do with the Japanese, with the North Korean ballistic missile launch. Mm-hmm. We're going to find out because now I understand this afternoon video has emerged of what was going on at that table. And if it turns out that you're actually going, the entire United States, if that video comes out and it turns to be about North Korea, we could be having what we call an inadvertent leak of information to the entire nation. I mean, the entire nation would have to get debriefed and read in and out of the program due to inadvertent exposure to top secret material. This is insane that we're talking.
That's the word.
These people, Randy, these people cannot do government. They don't understand national security. They are operating in a bold and arrogant manner, which is screw everybody else. If I were the central adjudicating authority, the DOD CAF, or CIA CAF, I'd be pulling clearances left and right.
Yeah.
These people should not be allowed near this material. They have already, within 3 weeks, horribly abused it and or may have, we don't know whether someone is leaking this information to the Russians. By the way, last point, the Steele memo. The Russians are hunting down, killing, or arresting everyone who they believe is a source to that memo.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that. I see people turning up poisoned and dead, and it's
whoever they kill or whoever they arrest, it means that memo blip is true.
True, yeah, including the salacious parts, which I'll never get out of my permanent Rolodex, and I've seen a lot. But
hello.
Oh my God! But let me just ask you if you believe that this might be true. The Independent in the UK is reporting that that former NSA analyst and a counterintelligence officer and some of our spy agencies have begun withholding intelligence from the Oval Office with fear that, quote, the Kremlin has ears inside the White House Situation Room. Do you think that there's any truth to something like that?
Well, that comes from John Schindler. He's a disgraced NSA person.
Wow, really? Okay.
If you Google him, you will see the breadth and measure of that disgrace. He did some public exposure, which was salacious in its own way, on government computers. So he fancies himself a cybersecurity expert, and he did work at NSA for a while. He was a Naval Reserve officer. However, he's got a history of exaggeration.
Okay.
I have worked at NSA myself. I've worked in various other branches of the government that I'm not allowed to discuss. But the people who work in these jobs at the NSA, at CIA, at DIA, they are true patriots.
Yeah.
And they come day in, day out, and do a thankless job in the dark with very little accolades at all, and living up to the honor and statement of Nathan Hale, who said that he has but one life to lose for his country. And these people feel the same way. There is information that must be shared with the president. The president is only given information that is in bullet point. If I would be suspicious if he asked for the keys to the kingdom, for example, which is I want to know about the most top secret encrypted material that's carried out at NSA, or the real names of foreign agents.
Oh, my God.
No president asks for that. I mean, Barack Obama certainly wouldn't. He would say, "What are you doing?" And they would say, "We're doing stuff." And he'd say, "Is it fun stuff?" And he'd say, "Yeah, it's really good stuff." And he'll say, "What's the result of this stuff?" By the way, this is how we all talk. And they'll say, "This stuff will hinder, the Iranian nuclear weapons program by 7 years." And he goes, "If I sign this piece of paper, will that stuff happen?" And they go, "Yes." And he goes, "Signed."
Right.
And he doesn't want to know.
Right. Right. And the last president that wanted to know outed Valerie Plame. Remember that?
Absolutely, yeah. Valerie Plame Wilson, who was a friend of mine.
Yeah.
And that's when you get into trouble.
Yeah.
I mean, if even presidents don't really have an ultimate need to know. There's nice to know, but nice to know is not a classification authorization.
Yeah.
If he wants to watch a live feed on a mission that he signed off on, great. That is his responsibility to give him situational awareness as the commander-in-chief. If he asks for all the real name of every agent inside of ISIS, and you might want to say, "Mr. President, are you sure you want to know that?"
Yeah.
Because this is the sort of thing that you could have inadvertent exposure. It could kill not only our assets, but it could kill our allies. And worse, it could jeopardize the lives of our American citizens and our special operations and intelligence officers in the field who really don't want to be involved in this. But Donald Trump seems to want to drag them in left and right.
Do you think the Russians have something on Donald Trump? Do you think he's being blackmailed?
Absolutely.
You do?
Absolutely.
Do you
and the reason that I say that is, one, I've spent almost the last year watching this, and people always ask me, they say, "Malcolm, you're a Middle East guy. What do you know about Russia?" Russian was the first language I ever learned. Got 3 kids adopted from Moscow, and
what?
And yeah, I got my own little KGB cell.
Oh my God! Wow.
That's what I tell my buddies at the Spy Museum. I said I have my own KGB cell, but they don't speak Russian anymore. But
yeah, I'm Ukrainian. I don't speak Russian either. So.
Well, it's one of the first languages I've learned. But when I came into military intelligence, the naval intelligence, the first thing they teach you in counterintelligence is the Russians are everywhere. And back in those days, I worked Libya, Syria, Yemen, Sudan, wherever. Russia was always there. Russian spies were always there. Russians were always trying to flip people as assets. And in one instance where I was at NSA, it worked. They paid one guy $35,000, and he sold some of the top most secrets in the United States. So we always had to be on guard.
Oh,
So when
I
saw this
remember that.
operation-
I remember that. Yeah, I thought he came very cheaply. I thought is what that was. But okay, so this is exactly what the dossier says too. I mean, it's not. This is not just us yelling into the void. This is what the dossier says too. It said that they were cultivating. They were looking for Michael Flynn. They were looking. They even tried with Jill Stein, Lyndon LaRouche. All these people that they were looking to flip people, and apparently they succeeded with Trump. So we sort of have a Manchurian candidate, don't we?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is Trevor Noah in the Daily Show during the election.
Yeah.
Put it, I think, a little more succinctly. He said Donald Trump is like the Manchurian candidate who is running on the platform of the Manchurian candidate. Right? I'm the Manchurian candidate. The Russians have changed me. I'm a spy, and I will assassinate the president. Please elect me.
That's true. That's true.
Utterly amazing. I mean, it is. You are at the point of pulling your hair out. And the thing is, until this particular story, as the terrorism analyst at MSNBC, I was the most calm guy in the room. Yeah. But now there are truths and facts which are unavoidable. And everyone here, when you see these statements Donald Trump makes about Russia, there's no one that I know in the intelligence community who doesn't look at each other, shake their head, and go, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, right? WTF. Yeah. Why? And it brings to mind, why would you say that? What is your basis of operation? What is your personal motivation? And why would you suddenly decide to sell out 70 years of American defense policy? And then when you look at these past connections, you will start making bridges. But until the evidence comes out, we don't know. It is just suspicious.
Well,
it's now moving from suspicious to sinister.
Yeah, well, obviously. I mean, didn't John Brennan, the former director of the CIA, didn't he get a recording of a conversation last year from one of the Baltic states' intelligence agencies saying that money from the Kremlin had gone to the Trump campaign? I know that was reported in the BBC. And, if that's true, and it's being reported in by the BBC, which is, a solid news outfit, where is our counterintelligence task force to investigate this?
Well, the National Counterintelligence Center and the people of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division, who work for the Director of National Intelligence, by the way.
Yeah.
And this is why I think Director Comey has been so coy. He really has two faces about these issues. I think he thinks the regular gumshoeing political things with Hillary Clinton he saw as political. But when it came to questions of counterintelligence, he didn't want to go anywhere near that discussion because he knows how important it is. If there is a spy hunt going on, and we know there is, FISA warrants have been issued.
Right.
Then what you are going to find is this information has been introduced to the United States through our joint analytical centers. We may have had an allied power come up to us and say, hey, I've got a recording. And I've been in the room for these things where they push something across the table and we say, sorry, walk it out of the room until we come back with a FISA warrant. And then, of course, I'm excluded from it because I'm just a collections operator. And then the lawyers and the liaison officers up at the high level of NSA or CIA take over these operations. And until they get a warrant, then the FBI walks into the room with that warrant and takes possession of information which may be detrimental to the United States. We have a process for handling that. But the Estonians don't, right? I mean, if they get a tape and they think they've got a cell phone, they'll just walk it over to the BBC and go, hey, bros, listen to this. This is very interesting. Yeah, and then that comes out as media. It may be in our hands. Yeah. We just are not going to tell you.
So you think that there's a process and that Comey is abiding by that process? Yeah, because
I think he is. Comey is a relatively decent guy. I think he, like I said, when the politics put pressure on him, he bent to politics, but now he will never bend on a counterintelligence mission. He knows that will be not only the end of his career, it could sully the FBI forever if he were to play politics with this. He's going to let the spy hunters hunt.
Yes, I am of that mind, I have to say. And I get a lot of flack for that. I get a lot of heat for saying that. But I always say, you know, I keep on saying, I want Comey to be my boyfriend. And by that I mean, all you have to do to be my boyfriend is do the right thing when no one's looking. Do you know? And
yeah, absolutely.
Right. And so this is the hope I hold out, that he has been doing this ever since, you know, the CIA said, we have some recordings and we need to look into this. And by the way, what is going on with the FBI in New York? And where is Rudy Giuliani? And why is he talking to these agents? And, you know, right? I mean, there was a lot of corruption. There was
sure.
Yeah.
And this is where we need an independent investigation with subpoena power.
Yeah.
If you're going to spend years
what did you think
investigating... I'm sorry, go ahead.
We're getting right up to the news time. But I just wanted to ask you, what did you think of the House Intelligence Committee today? Nunes saying that, there's nothing here. We don't need to look at this.
That's insane, and he's going to eat every one of those words.
Yeah.
And if it turns out that someone is dirty or has invisible strings, all right, he's going to go down with them. This is a matter that is nonpartisan. This is the security of the United States. This requires patriots, not party members.
I love you, Malcolm Nance. My audience was right. You are my free bird.
Okay, Airman, calm down.
Thank you. Yes, that's all I ever was. It's just an airman.
You're welcome.
All right, thank you so much. We will talk again soon, I'm sure, because now I have your phone number.
All right, take care.
Thank you. Malcolm Nance, everybody, the author of a million books, but the latest one is about hacking. And then there'll be another one about hacking after this one about hacking. It's incredible. What was the name of that book? You had it up on the screen the whole time, didn't you? What was it called?
I have to look it up.
The Plot to Hack America.
The Randi Rhodes Air Force. The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
Hi, we're back, and everything is possible again. Isn't it beautiful? Well, if you want to keep it this way, buy a stinking podcast. Oh, yes, you have to buy a stinking podcast. And you get that at RandiRhodes.com, where we're open all day, all night long. RandiRhodes.com. Get your stinking podcast.
You're listening to WIN, Workers Independent News, a diversified media enterprises production. I'm Doug Cunningham. No strike for now at AT&T. AT&T and the CWA extended their labor contract while talks on a new labor agreement continue. The 21,000 CWA workers took a strike authorization vote, and 93% of those voting approved a strike. Talks will continue at the table at AT&T with no strike for now. IUE CWA workers are voting on a tentative new labor agreement ending a Momentive chemical plant strike in New York State. The strike started November 2nd of 2016. Workers started voting Monday on ratification of the tentative deal.
One more warning, and then you will be arrested. First warning. What do we want? 15! When do we want it?
Fight for 15 workers were on the march in several cities Monday, protesting Labor Secretary nominee Andy Puzder and demanding $15 and a union. Workers rallied at Hardee's headquarters in St. Louis and several other cities.
Our men was in there, and we didn't want them tear gas.
The Great Flint Sit-Down Strike is 80 years old. It's like a Valentine to working people from the past, reminding us that even in the darkest hours, working people have the right stuff to organize and to win. The Great Flint Sit-Down Strike of 36-37 against General Motors won recognition for the UAW. About 2,000 workers sat down and occupied a vital Chevrolet factory for 44 days against police assaults. The strike was so effective that GM output plummeted from 50,000 to just 125 cars in February of 1937. UAW membership grew from 30,000 to 500,000 within the next year. Janora Dollinger was a leader of the Women's Emergency Brigade supporting the strike.
I saw a first woman struggling, and I noticed that she had started to come down, and a cop grabbed her by the coat, and she went right out of that coat. And this was in freezing weather, and she just kept right on coming.
Delia Parrish delivered food to strikers.
Here come the cops. You can't go down there. I said, I'm going, and I did. And the management had the gate locked. And you know how tall that fence is. I couldn't raise it up high enough for them guys inside to get it. They come out with torches, they melted that blooming fence to the ground. And then they could take the food all in.
Workers Independent News is brought to you by the American Federation of Teachers and its 1.6 million members working to reclaim the promise of public education, health care, and public services for our students, their families, and our communities. More information online at aft.org. Brought to you by Union Active, your certified iOS and Android mobile app developer, offering high-quality, union-made mobile apps backed by a support team which upgrades your product to every new mobile operating system. Features, pricing, and examples are online at unionactive.com.
You've been listening to WIN, Workers Independent News. For more information, visit laborradio.org.
I love me some beef jerky. I do. I love beef jerky. People make fun of me, but if you're a jerky lover, you know we're real picky about the jerky. You want big protein, big flavor, big packs, and very little carbs. And that's why my favorite snack is jerky. But you can't get the best stuff at the gas station. You can't even get it at the supermarket. You have to order it online from the best purveyors of jerky I've ever found, Herky Jerky. Herky Jerky is the official snack of the Randi Rhodes Air Force, and it comes in elk, buffalo, beef, and bacon. Oh, yes, bacon, hot, mild, 14 other incredible flavors too. And right now, get $6 off your order of $50 or more. And these aren't little 3-ounce frou-frou bags of jerky. These are big, beautiful, nearly 1-pound bags of fresh, delicious, perfectly spiced jerky that bites and chews like homemade jerky should. Go to herkyjerky.com and buy your 12.5 or 2-pound pack and take them with you everywhere. School, work, camping, or just stick the sticks in your bag for quick protein that feels and tastes like heaven. herkyjerky.com.
Here's a sample of what you'll hear on the Leslie Marshall Show weekdays, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern on the Progressive Voices Network. Life can't just be a voucher in a charter school. And I think what she would like is everybody to homeschool and, the Bible to be the, academic reference. The problem is kids in more impoverished areas or kids that are in rural areas or kids that just don't meet the academic standard of some of these private institutions out there. That's one of the issues, which is access to money. A voucher isn't going to cover everything. And again, you're leaving the lower income and the poor behind. And then 3, access. One of the reasons we see people in Alaska and Maine going crazy is, if you lose a public school system, you lose the public transportation that's attached to that school system. There are a lot of us out there who work every day and need our children to go to that bus stop, to get on that bus, and we know they're safe, and we know that the teachers are educated to teach our children. Hear the whole story on the Leslie Marshall Show, Monday to Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. Eastern, 3 to 4 p.m. Pacific on the Progressive Voices Network.
The Randi Rhodes Show is brought to you by our partners at ITM Trading. Call them at 1-888-OWN-GOLD and ask for a free gold kit. 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
Mary had a little lamb. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America. From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show. Turn up your mind.
Sit down with the counterparts and start that dialogue. And that's exactly what he did.
Did the president instruct him to talk about sanctions?
No, absolutely not. The issue isn't whether or not what he discussed. There's been a complete legal review of that, and there's no issue with that. The issue is whether or not he failed to properly inform the vice president or not be honest with him or not remember it. But that's the plain and simple issue. And
I was asked on Air Force One on Friday, traveling down to Mar-a-Lago, about reports, about conversations with the Russians, about sanctions. He said, I don't know about it. I'll look into that. Mm-hmm. Was he being truthful?
No, what he was asked specifically is, was he aware of a Washington Post story? He hadn't seen that at the time. The first day that the Department of Justice made White House counsel available or sought to notify White House counsel was January 26th. The president was immediately informed of the situation, and White House counsel at that time undertook an extensive review, both of materials and questioning. I'm not going to get into the specifics. What I will tell you is on multiple occasions, they had an exhaustive and extensive questioning of General Flynn on several occasions. The thing that's important to note is the vice president, myself, in fact, I think the first time I brought this issue up was January 13th. The Department of Justice didn't notify the White House or the White House counsel at that time in the transition phase until 13 days later. So I think it's important to understand something very, very important. This idea of why did it take so long, I think the first question should be, where was the Department of Justice in this? They didn't notify the White House counsel's office until January 26th. At that time, there was an immediate, the president was immediately informed of that and then asked the White House counsel to conduct a very, very thorough review. The first part of that review was focused on whether or not there was any legal issue. That's it. Once that became the issue, then it shifted into phase two, which is whether or not there was trust still maintained. I don't know that it was intentional. He may have just forgotten, but I think at some point, trust isn't just a trust.
Weird thing to forget though in a conversation.
But that's the point, Jim, is that at some point that trust eroded.
Okay, so this was Sean Spicer today at the press conference, squarely laying everything at the feet of the department, the Justice Department, for not notifying the White House counsel sooner. I don't know where the White House counsel, John McGahn, is. I have no idea where he's been. I mean, you have Kellyanne Conway hawking, Ivanka, all kinds of ethical things are going on. And now all of a sudden, it's, Don McGahn did this very, expansive investigation into whether or not Flynn was telling, I'm not sure what the White House counsel, does. So I thought I would reach out to a former White House counsel. If you want to know what the job is, I suppose you should talk to somebody who was one. And John Dean was one when President Richard Nixon, if the president does it, it's not illegal, was president. So I reached out and John said, yes, thank you. I know you're so busy, John Dean, but thank you for being here.
Thanks, Randy.
Haven't talked to you since probably Conservatives Without a Conscience.
Too long.
How many books ago was that?
2.
Wow. Unbelievable. Anyway, I've watched and listened and read that you believe that this man, this Donald Trump and his team is going to test our democracy like it's never been tested. And God knows we've been tested under the Cheney and the Newt Gingriches and the impeachments and the Nixons and all. But this is really, really something different. But before we talk about authoritarian personalities and why Trump is one, and that makes him exploitable, by the way. Could we talk about this press conference? Did you happen to see Spicer today lay everything at Don McGahn's feet, the White House counsel?
I did not, but I saw it on the wire services story of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing of laying it on the Department of Justice and the White House counsel, the timing stuff, is just baloney. They had the information. One of the reasons the Justice Department didn't bring it over earlier is because Comey was conducting an investigation, and he was worried that by telling the White House it would disrupt his investigation, which we still don't know anything about. That hasn't been revealed, and it appears to be ongoing.
Yes, and of course, this is beyond law enforcement. This has to do with national security and intelligence, and I'm sure Comey is doing exactly what is required when you're dealing with something as treacherous as national security, intelligence, and whether or not we've got 3 men, at least in the Trump administration, Carter Page, Paul Manafort, and now Michael Flynn, who made deals with Russia that said that if you soften sanctions or if you promise, to not arm Ukraine, will release documents and denigrate and make impossible Hillary Clinton's candidacy.
Which they did. Did a nice job of doing.
They certainly did. But, this press conference today, Spicer was laying out a timeline, but his timeline did not begin until December. We know that the Republican National Committee's platform was softened and changed with regard to Russia and Ukraine being armed with lethal weapons. They changed lethal weapons to, we'll do whatever we need to do to help, Ukraine out, but not lethal weapons, way back in July. So how could this be Don McGahn's fault and the Department of Justice's fault if all this predates Flynn's recorded conversations where the topic of discussion was specifically sanctions. It wasn't an aside. It wasn't a Merry Christmas. It was a whole, 5 phone calls, and at least one was about, don't worry, President Obama's sanctions will go away.
Well, just as you know what this is, everybody else does too. It's smoke, and it doesn't really sell. Mm-hmm. The press is going to look through it. It's going to blow out with the next breeze. And Spicer himself probably may not be there for the next press conference.
Yeah, I think he's next too. I really do. I think he's the next casualty. But I got to say, you make a really good point when I listen to the things that you offer up. And one of the things that you said is that this is a different era. It's a different time. People are a lot more tolerant of law breaking now. They everything they don't like is fake. Even though these events unfolded exactly the way, people who study politics, you, me, a whole host of others. This is not, anything that we couldn't see coming. We all said this was going to happen, and then it happens, and people told me, while I was saying it, that I was making stuff up and that it was fake news, and then the news actually happens. And they just move on to the next thing that is fake. What is going on? Why do you think America is so tolerant of cozying up to foreign governments that are our adversary and saying anything to the contrary that I would say, that you would say, that I just did talk to Malcolm Nance, an intelligence officer would say, this is all fake. What is this?
Well, I don't think Americans are particularly tolerant of reported and fake news, using that as an excuse. You've got to remember, first of all, that Trump's voters and supporters are low information voters. They don't really want this information. They don't know what to do with it when they get it. They really probably can't, many of them can tell you there are 3 branches of government. And the problem is that their leader, our new president, doesn't know much more than they do. That's the most frightening thing
that
to me.
is scary. That's
and it is frightening. I think, Randy, I think a lot of what's going on, for example, all of the chaos. They say, well, this is his approach, chaos.
Right.
Well, that's baloney. That's trying to re-spin the chaos that's happening because he's so ignorant, because his staff won't even call somebody in to give them a tour of the place to show them where the lights are in the cabinet room. I mean, it's pathetic. It goes day after day. I'm told that the West Wing is really about not even 50% functioning. The place, people that don't know what to do. I've never seen a White House put out more press material with typos. I mean, they don't even have a good editorial system, even.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And one of the criteria I've always had, because after, let's say, 99, 2000, those years, everything became internet. And I would, whatever, a news organization I was reading, if there was a typo, I just said, this isn't real. And, just moved on to something that was like, and so I just confined myself to the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, and the Washington Post, the Guardian, you know what I mean? I even fact-checked something with Malcolm Nance today that was in the Independent, and he told me who the secret guy, the anonymous tipster was, and he said this guy is, he's full of crap. But I got to tell you, the comparisons to Nixon are so strong. But you always said that there was something, redeeming about Nixon, in that if you had a one-on-one conversation with him, you could see him checking his authoritarian tendencies. You could see him softening and saying the president shouldn't do that. President shouldn't say that, right?
There were lines he would not cross. And I'm not sure that there are any that Donald Trump would either knowingly or unknowingly not cross. And he wouldn't be even asking others where the lines are. They have broken so many norms. That's one of the most encouraging things about what's happened in the last 24 hours, is that the weight of public opinion has finally had an impact on this man and his administration. They forced Flynn out. That was the Washington Post and New York Times stories last night pushed the needle over, and Trump couldn't handle it anymore. It shows that he cannot defy all norms. So that's a little bit of encouragement that there might be a check on this guy who, one, doesn't know what he's doing, and two, what he does know, he thinks he has the authority to do anything he wants to. And he's got some staffers who buy into that, too. This fellow, Stephen Miller,
oh my God,
may be the most obnoxious White House staffer I've ever seen. I've been watching that staff for 50 years.
Yeah, you know, somebody did one of these internet memes, you know, and they put Stephen Miller's face next to Mr. Burns from The Simpsons, and it was uncanny. I mean, it was just, the resemblance was crazy off the hook. Yeah, he is a real bully, that kid. He just got in people, you will not question, and this is not to be questioned. And I mean, the reaction from the entire, journalistic community, let alone the punditry, was that people's mouths literally fell to the floor. And Trump is tweeting, great job. Stephen represented us on all the Sunday show. Great job. What did he think was great about that person, attacking the judiciary branch, which seems to be the only branch that can check Donald Trump? Do you think that's a coincidence?
Well, that was true until last night, and it's clear that the media can have an impact as well.
Thank God, right? And this is why he attacks both of those areas, in my best guesstimate.
He's trying to discredit them.
Right, and
that's
it's
what
it is working.
What authoritarian personalities do. They discredit those who can check their power.
You say he's thrilling but dangerous. I love that. I think that's really true. I mean, every day I wake up and Howard.
You've been reading my tweets.
Oh, I follow you on Twitter. I do. I messaged you privately. For God's sake, I don't do that with anybody. It took me 15 minutes to figure out how.
Well, share my handle so your listeners can follow.
Oh, well, I just put in at John W. Dean, right?
At John W. Dean.
Yeah, that's you. He's at John W. Dean. Go ahead and follow John Dean, because I do, and we tweet back and forth a lot. In fact, did you see me tweeting to you last night? I said at John Dean is at Sally Q. Yates. She is the John Dean in this scenario.
I missed that.
Oh, yeah. I tweeted her. I tweeted you last night because, it's so interesting that whatever Comey is doing is obviously it obviously does and has required FISA warrants. Okay. And when they fired Sally Yates, who tried to tell them, we've got recordings, for Pete's sake, you are blackmailable now. He fired her. And the little detail that really blew my mind was that she was the only person up until Sessions was confirmed who was able to sign off on a FISA warrant. And I think
the guy they brought in from the Eastern District was too.
Oh yeah,
which is why they brought him in.
Oh.
It has to be somebody who has a Senate confirmation, which a U.S. attorney from any of the 113 or whatever there are U.S. attorneys are all Senate approved, so that he would have had the authority too.
See, I'm dying for Comey's investigation to be complete, but I think it's going to take at least a year. And so people that want the 4 year to not be 4 years, I tell them that it probably won't be, but it's going to be a year of this.
Well, hopefully the Congress, there's very few privileges that Flynn could claim if he gets called up to the Hill, particularly in closed session by the Intelligence Committee.
Yeah, because I was going to say, won't he cloak himself in executive privilege with any conversation he's had, even though he's not under the umbrella anymore?
He can do that for 23 days.
Oh, that's
but anything that and the most important stuff is probably what happened before
he was president.
He was before he was president, and that is certainly there's no privilege there.
Got it. Oh, that's interesting. That's really cool. And what do you think we'll ever talk to Paul Manafort and find out how he was able to lobby a foreign government without registering as a foreign lobbyist?
I think he's going to take the fifth. But that's the other possibility with Flynn. He'll take the fifth.
Oh, wow. And Carter Page we don't hear much about, but he was the first foreign policy advisor and did some...
Well, talk to Malcolm about Carter Page.
I did.
he will bend your ear on that.
Oh, man.
And has a lot of interesting information.
Yes, there's just not enough time in the day to talk to you two people. The two of you have sparked my awareness of 23 days and taking the fifth and all these things I hadn't really thought all the way through. But that's why it was so valuable to have you here today. So it's, in conclusion, this is not Don McGahn, the White House counsel's problem, right?
No.
No. This is not the Department of Justice's issue.
No.
No. This is, Comey is investigating, and it will take, at least a year.
Maybe not.
Maybe not.
Well,
yeah.
What would be interesting is if they start a grand jury on this. That will expedite it considerably.
Now, who would have to authorize that?
There are two sites that might do a grand jury. One would be the Eastern District of Virginia over in Alexandria.
Yeah.
And the other would be the District of Columbia. Those U.S. attorneys have not been appointed yet. There are acting ones there now that are just really the top level staff career people. But the Department of Justice can show surprising independence. Jeff Sessions has got so many conflicts in any investigation related to this.
He'd have to recuse himself.
He has to recuse himself.
Yeah. He's ineffective just at the get-go. Yeah, I get it. Well, I'll keep watching the Eastern District. If anything happens, I'll tweet you, and you can come on and educate me about how that process works.
All right.
Thank you.
Good luck, Randy.
Thanks, John Dean. Really appreciate your time today. Thank you. John W. Dean, everybody. He wants... He loves to be tweeted at. I'll tell you, I've been tweeting him for a while, and John is 78 years old, and he tweets better than I do, which is saying something terrible about myself. But he is at John W. Dean, and he's an amazing person to follow because, like he said, if one of these acting attorney generals, because there isn't an attorney general in either of D.C. and not in Eastern Virginia. So if these career people who are actually better suited because they're not political, they're career attorneys, they're prosecutors. You remember when Bush went and purged all the prosecutors? Yeah. So these are the ones that are left. They're career prosecutors, and if they asked for a grand jury, wouldn't that be fascinating? Wouldn't that be interesting? So then you'd have Manafort and all the camera crews following him into a grand jury. You'd have Carter Page, who did a multi-million-dollar deal with Rosneft, the Russian oil company, right after he left the Trump campaign as foreign policy advisor. Now you have Michael Flynn, the national security advisor, they would all take this could be, just as John Dean says, thrilling but dangerous. All right, 26 after.
All things Randy at randyrhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, The Randy Rhodes Show.
Buy a stinking podcast. Now that Trump's on his way to the White House, how long do you think it's going to take him and his Wall Street cronies to completely wreck our economy? This Trump administration is greedy, full of avarice, and awful, and the damage they're going to do to the economy will become legend. They are going to make the financial crisis of 2008 look like a pool party. And once again, working class Americans, you're going to get soaked. And that's why now more than ever, it's time to diversify your investment portfolio. Gold's low correlation with stocks and bonds can help you in times of uncertainty. Just call my friends at ITM Trading today, get a free gold kit, and learn why gold survives every government, every currency, and every economic crisis. Call ITM Trading at 1-888-OWN-GOLD for guidance from their precious metals experts. They've helped tens of thousands of people navigate this market, and they have the best reputation in this industry. So call 1-888-OWN-GOLD, 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
Question: is the Trump administration and Steve Bannon in particular playing chess while we're all assuming they're playing checkers? Or put another way, is Bannon a master magician and we're the victims of sleight of hand? The recent immigration ban was so amateurishly conceived and executed that it has us thinking it must be misdirection, a ruse to cover something they don't want us to notice. Isn't it possible that by creating such a storm of controversy, they led us away from the real story? And that's installing Bannon on the National Security Council's Principals Committee. That's the most critical foreign policy committee in government. We all need to stay well informed, and Progressive Voices is here to play that role, but it's expensive. We're a nonprofit and we try to restrict commercial messaging, so that's where you come in. Please contribute right now by going to progressivevoices.com, clicking the donate button, and making your contribution. Keep all of our progressive voices, that's Tom, Steph, Randy, and you, loud and clear. Donate now at progressivevoices.com. Thanks.
We did it, you bastards! We're live! And it only took 2 years! Okay. All right. So we're back, we're live, and you're there, and we're here, and ain't that great? Now let me just tell you that if you want to listen whenever and wherever you'd like to listen, just go to randyrhodes.com, click on podcasts and swag, and get your podcast commercial-free, on demand, on any device. randyrhodes.com. Open all day, every day.
Allison is perfect. I mean, she'd never tell you that. She's humble and perfect. She likes everyone. She even likes her untidy roommate's weird guinea pig. Allison, wait, are you texting and driving? Allison, no. That's the exact opposite of what I was just saying about you. Why, Allison? Why? Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Call in, connect. To speak to Randy, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. Absolutely, Joe. We should not move on here to issues of staffing, who's going to be the next director. There's only one question I have in my mind. President Trump, did you know what Flynn said to the Russian ambassador? Did he do it with your approval? Did he do it with your instruction? When did you find out about it? What did you tell Pence? We're talking about this as if Pence was president, and Trump isn't even in the picture. This is, I think, one of the most serious national security affairs that our country has been involved in, certainly in my lifetime. Russia hacked our election, and we keep just moving on to Ivanka Trump's jewelry and Nordstrom's. This cannot be discussed and focused on enough.
What, Richard Oz, is the impact if the President of the United States did know about the conversation between his national security advisor, with whom he was extraordinarily close, and the Russian ambassador?
Well, then you're at political DEFCON. You're at the top, because I think then it raises real questions. I actually think the impeachment word would be introduced at that point.
Oh, for Pete's sake.
At the risk of being melodramatic, that becomes a first-order political crisis for this president and this administration.
And Mark Halpern, you agree with that?
I think Sean Spicer, if he doesn't come out and perform exceedingly well in a few hours at his briefing, or any other spokesperson today to calm the horses on this, people are going to start talking about the profound implications of what's happened.
David,
because the mystery about Russia now has become concrete.
David.
The mystery of Russia now has become concrete. They hacked our elections. They have co-opted our president. They have changed the GOP platform with regard to Russian aggression in Crimea and Ukraine. They have rewarded Carter Page, the first foreign policy advisor to Donald Trump. Manafort was lobbying Ukraine without a license to lobby a foreign government. This whole entire scenario is so dirty and so violative of everything that America stands for, number one, and number two, it is a national security crisis in that our government is now beholden to Russia's whims and will to reshape our foreign policy with regard to who is our ally, who we will fight on behalf of. You know, NATO is, if one person's attacked, we're all attacked. Now, the only time NATO has ever been invoked in the entire, 70 years of NATO's existence was after 9/11. All these countries, these allies of ours in NATO, fought with us in far-flung places like Afghanistan and also in Iraq, who had done nothing on September 11th? Nothing. So it's just it's just a very bizarre position that this particular president has put us in. And of course, if you talk to people who know this business of counterintelligence and intelligence gathering, and you talk to people who know what the White House Counsel does, and that this Sean Spicer's entire press conference today, which David Halpern said he better come out strong today, or they're going to start talking about impeachment and grand juries, and they're going to start about talking about investigations, which the Senate has started talking about. Dan Burton, I mean, honest to God, not Dan Burton, what's his name? The Republican senator. I mean, if you have a Republican senators willing to start investigations now, and you do have Republican senators willing to start investigations.
Roy Blount, yeah. Blount from Missouri.
Oh, Blunt,
Yeah,
Roy
right.
Blunt. Yeah, if you have Roy Blunt, he's from Missouri, saying, yeah, we're going to start but over in the House, oh my God, over in the House, there are a bunch of Putin puppets also. You have Nunez, who's in charge of the Intelligence Committee, who said, there's nothing to see here, move along, move along. But Spicer tried, this is why I wanted to talk to John Dean, just for clarification on some specific points that Spicer made, which was to say, this is the fault of the Department of Justice. They didn't tell us about the Flynn tape. They didn't tell. That's bullcrap. This is not the White House counsel's fault, although where the hell is he with all these ethical violations? Does he counsel any? I mean, they said Kellyanne Conway's been counseled. What did that involve? She's been counseled. Was that, did she get psychiatric care? Did she go to a psychologist? Who counseled? What was it? Acupuncture? What was it? Hypnotism? Who counseled her and what was the counseling? But, they're trying to blame all the other ancillary people. And, John Dean is correct in that Jeff Sessions, who is now the Attorney General, has to recuse himself from all of this. All of it. I'm surprised he didn't recuse himself from voting for Betsy DeVos. He should have. But anyway, David Ignatius, who wrote the articles that moved the needle, as we say, towards Flynn resigning last night at 11 o'clock at night, he's the author of these articles. He's the real journalist. He's the one that does the real reportage. There are real people out there who are really, really following leads, talking to people, getting the facts, who understand there's a tape, knows what's on the tape because somebody informed them that the tape clearly shows a conversation, that the topic of the conversation, meaning the conversation was held, explicitly was the word, to discuss removing sanctions on Russia. Okay, so David Ignatius is that journalist, or he's one of amazing journalists out there. And here's what he said this morning, and this was chilling because he knows.
David Ignatius, would you agree with that?
I have a feeling that our discussions are going to move toward even broader things than Flynn's conversation with Kislyak. What happened to Paul Manafort during the campaign?
Hello?
Why was he fired? There's an FBI investigation that continues into that and to other issues that are related. So I think the question of the Trump team's relationship with Russia is now front and center. I think President Trump is going to have to answer questions, as Tom Friedman said. What did he know? When did he know it? But that's just the beginning of this tangled knot of issues.
And as we keep peeling away at this, I think the next question will be, to Tom Friedman's point, was the phone call from General Flynn to the Russian ambassador, was the relationship with the Trump administration and the Russian government some sort of a quid pro quo for meddling in the election? That will be the next step for the intel community to look into that.
Why did that conversation happen?
It is more important now than ever before that they get somebody in the White House. Again, either put Reince Priebus in charge.
Reince, he's part of it
let
too.
him run everything.
Joe.
Or get somebody else in there. Because Andrea Mitchell right now, this is a White House in chaos. And just listening to Tom Friedman and David Ignatius and Richard Haass and Mark Halperin, a storm is coming. And it's coming fast and it's coming hard, and they better be ready for it.
Seriously, dude, this is not going to end well. This is, what are we, at the beginning of week 4? Not even a month. Look at the mess this man has made, signing executive orders that he doesn't even understand, okay? Creating chaos everywhere. You know, bringing these people. That, I have to say, David Ignatius is the only person, only journalist I've heard, and I haven't been able to watch TV all day, but this morning, he was the only person on the TV shows who actually brought up Paul Manafort's name. People forget that Paul Manafort was the campaign manager until August. And then Kellyanne Conway, who's conning her way right through all the... Oh, this morning, my God. She's like, I don't know what's going on. I mean, it doesn't, and Matt Lauer. Oh, my God.
This weekend was it. All right, Chuck, stand by. Kellyanne Conway is President Trump's counselor. Kellyanne, good morning to you.
Good morning, Matt.
Yesterday afternoon on MSNBC, you said that Michael Flynn enjoyed the full confidence of the president. Sean Spicer later said the president was evaluating the situation, and then Michael Flynn resigns overnight. Were you out of the loop on this?
No, not at all. Both were true. The president is very loyal.
True.
He's a very loyal person, and by night's end, Mike it was best to resign. He knew he'd become a lightning rod, and he made that decision.
So had he not resigned, the president would continue with him as national security advisor, even though he misled the vice president and the administration about the contents of that call?
That fact is what became unsustainable, actually. I think misleading the vice president really was the key here. And I spoke with the president this morning. He asked me to speak on his behalf and to reiterate that Mike Flynn had resigned. He decided that the situation had become unsustainable for him here, and of course the president accepted that resignation.
You're saying that was the straw that broke the camel's back, but the White House knew about that last month when the Justice Department warned the White House that Mr. Flynn or General Flynn had not been completely honest in characterizing that conversation with the Russian ambassador, and they even went further to say that as a result of that dishonesty, he was at risk for blackmailing by the Russians.
Well, that's one characterization.
That's one way to put it. He was blackmailable. That's one way to put it. You see, this makes no sense, okay? She's saying that the president would have stood by Michael Flynn even after the intercepted phone call, transcript, and audio recordings were presented to the president over a month ago. She says the president would have stood by Flynn, but Flynn decided that he had become a lightning rod and he should resign. That makes no sense that the president of the United States would put his trust into a guy who he could read transcripts of and listen to audio recordings of, say, don't worry, the sanctions are coming off. What we need from you is to put out damaging stories about Hillary Clinton's email. Go use WikiLeaks as your vessel to disseminate this information, true or false. We don't care. Just do it. That's what's on those phone calls. And she's sitting there saying, and they're saying, well, now the president is blackmailable by Russia, and also this dossier is being checked out, and the intelligence services of the United States of America, who, I got news for you. If you attack the intel community, they're going to attack you back. That's just a fact. And he has trashed them too. So-called intelligence and in his sarcastic quotes, so-called judges in sarcastic quotes, just trashing all the people he feels can check his power is not a smart thing for him to be doing, because they can check his power and they will check his power. And now he's blackmailable. And she's going, oh, he still would have stood by. And then Spicer gets up and does a press conference today where he says, no, the president wouldn't have stood by him. It's just he just found out. The White House counsel just told him. He didn't know. Well, she says he did. And that he was so loyal that the only thing that did it for him was sending Mike Pence out to lie. That's what did it for him, which happened on January 15th. No, this all happened during the campaign. 3 people have been removed from the campaign because they were reported on by guys like David Ignatius, by Eichenwalds, by the real reporters, the serious journalists. They reported the change to the GOP platform, Manafort lobbying for Viktor Yanukovych. The New York Times came out with that story about the $12.7 million that was going to that was going to Paul Manafort. All this has been out there the whole cycle. It's just that the Trump supporters don't read. And when they trash me, not that I give a rat's ass, okay? I've been through this before a million times. I don't care. But they say things like, "You're so dumb, D-U-M." Really? Scott in Sioux City, Iowa.
Hey, Randy.
Hi.
First time, long time.
Oh, hi.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Actually, we talked one time before, but you called me. It was last Valentine's Day.
Oh, hi. How's your boyfriend? Hi.
Good. I just wanted to call and wish you and Howard a happy Valentine's Day this year.
Oh, I don't know if people know this story, but when we were doing our Kickstarter thing, we had a thing that if you gave X amount, that I would make a phone call to anybody you wanted me to call. And Scott asked me to call his boyfriend and wish him a happy Valentine's Day. So I did.
Well, you called me. Tim had you call me.
Oh, it was Tim,
so.
your boyfriend had me call you.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I remember.
Yeah.
I remember doing that. You were like at work.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we talked about Bernie and Hillary, and who'd have thought a year later we'd be where we're at right now.
Talking about Trump, I know, as president. This is sick.
Oh my God.
I know. What world have we? It's like all these bad horror movies. It's like watching them one after the other, after the other, after the other. It's what it's like this last 3 weeks.
Oh, it's been horrible. I hate watching the news. It's like every morning, it's like a new. Something shocking every time you turn the news on.
It is. Howard gets up before me, and he goes downstairs and pulls in all the newspapers from the driveway, and he's sitting there, and he's reading, and then he wakes me up, and he goes, "Oh, you won't believe it."
Well, I'm leaving for Mexico next week for a few weeks, and I hope they have plenty of tequila there because I'll still be watching the news there. So
Buen viaje.
But anyway, I just wanted to wish you a happy Valentine's Day. That was such a nice surprise last year. So
oh, thanks for that.
Just wanted to say thanks.
My pleasure.
Good luck.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. You and Tim, you're just lovely. Thank you so much for supporting us early and with such gusto. I thank you so very much. You made this possible.
And I'm going to buy my mom the Stinkin' Podcast.
Oh, yay. Thank you. Thanks, Scott.
You bet. Have a good one.
Big hugs. Bye. Oh, I remember. I never would have remembered that had he not called. Yes, it was his boyfriend, Tim. And, we put out this little mass email and said, for X amount, I forget what the threshold, it was a lot. It was like $2,500. Yeah, and we said for $2,500, we'll call anybody you want on Valentine's Day. And Tim, his boyfriend, said, my boyfriend, Scott, is at work. And if you would call him, I swear to God, he would plotz right there on the floor at work. And go, no problem. No problem. So he called, and he made that donation. He truly did. Men of their word. And lovely people. Seriously. Nicest couple. That was a pleasure. So thank you very much. 46 after.
Commercial-free, on-demand, whenever, wherever listening experience. Visit RandyRhodes.com for your personal premium podcast today.
I'm David Pakman, host of The David Pakman Show on the Progressive Voices channel. Check out this clip from my show. Hey, trying to silence our senator here in Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren, has completely backfired on Senate Republicans. The Senate ended up confirming far-right Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions for Attorney General. He was sworn in earlier today by Donald Trump. Late Tuesday night, when the Senate was debating the nomination, Elizabeth Warren read a 30-year-old letter by Coretta Scott King, the widow of Martin Luther King Jr. And that letter criticized Jeff Sessions on his civil rights record. The letter was actually written during Sessions' failed 1986 confirmation for a federal judgeship. He didn't get it because of a number of these racially charged remarks that he made. And in response, the Republican majority Senate voted to rebuke Elizabeth Warren and cut her off while she was speaking. They used a very obscure Senate rule that's basically never used, which prohibits the impugning of other Congress members, and it completely backfired. Check out how it happened on Tuesday night.
Choosing instead to chill the exercise of the franchise by blacks by his misguided investigation. In fact, Mr. Sessions sought to punish older black civil rights activists, advisors, and colleagues of my husband, who had been key figures in the civil rights movement in the 1960s.
Uh-oh.
Mr. President.
They are...
Uh-oh.
Mr. President. The Majority Leader. The senators impugn the motives and conduct of our colleague from Alabama as warned by the chair.
And then he went on to actually shut the entire thing down. This also prevented her from speaking about Jeff Sessions on yesterday. This was a totally boneheaded move by the Republicans. This was very late, I think the middle of the night almost. No one would have heard about this speech, which, by the way, is publicly available anyway, if Mitch McConnell hadn't done this. And by silencing Elizabeth Warren, they turned it into a national story that every media outlet is talking about. It might end up being used as footage for a future campaign ad with video of Warren reading the speech. The video is all over corporate media. This has rallied the Democratic base.
After being kicked out of the Senate floor, Elizabeth Warren gave her speech on Facebook Live and millions of people tuned in. Yeah. I mean, this rule is known as Rule 13, Rule 19, I think.
Rule 19, yeah.
Which comes from a fistfight in 1902 that I think the senators were very upset about. Ted Cruz was able to call someone a liar on the Senate floor. They didn't invoke Rule 19.
Oh, no.
But this was just too far, apparently.
Move On raised $250,000 for Elizabeth Warren's 2018 Senate reelection campaign around this within 12 hours of the incident. How did McConnell and the Senate Republicans not realize that this would put her on a pedestal and ultimately make her look better? Everybody coming to her defense. This is an example of what's called the Streisand effect. And this, for people who haven't heard about it, is named after Barbara Streisand, where back in 2003, she tried to suppress pictures of her huge house in Malibu, California. And by trying to suppress the publication of those sort of paparazzi tabloid type pictures, she drew way more attention to the fact that the pictures exist than ever would have happened had she just not done anything. Let one of these magazines, I don't even remember what magazine it was or website, publish the pictures. This is exactly the same thing. This is the Streisand effect.
It's like when Donald Trump just can't let something go and he'll prop up the news story and keep it going for an extra couple of weeks.
I thought the Republican Party was the party of free speech. Oh, right. Only when it's convenient. The same way that this is the party of the free market. Only when that's convenient. And the party of freedom of expression of religion. Only when it's the right religion. Send me your thoughts. I'm on Twitter at @dpacman.
You've been listening to part of the David Pakman Show on the Progressive Voices channel. For full audio and video podcasts, interviews, and more, go to davidpakman.com and check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The David Pakman Show.
I am super sexually satisfied. I'm genuinely 100% more satisfied with my sex life than I was before Randi Rhodes came back on the air. Hi. I'm the Howard, and yes, it's true. I'm actually 100% more sexually satisfied than I was just one day ago. And I didn't grow a mustache. I didn't get an awesome new tattoo, and I didn't join a CrossFit gym either. I just bought a Randi Rhodes Air Force t-shirt. And when I did, I told Randi, well, there, I've done my part. How do I look at my awesome new Randi Rhodes Air Force 100% super soft cotton tee? And Randi said, that's it? That's all you did to support this unfreaking, unbelievably hard effort? Okay, Howard, go fuck yourself. So I did. And I have to tell you, I still got it. Get your super soft Randi Rhodes t-shirt at randyrhodes.com. Just click on podcasts and swag and order yours today. You'll feel a lot better after you tell Randi.
The Randi Rhodes Show is brought to you by our partners at ITM Trading. Call them at 1-888-OWN-GOLD and ask for a free gold kit. 1-888-OWN-GOLD.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on randyrhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or progressivevoices.com now.
Stephen Miller again yesterday on television saying one of the reasons the president lost the state of New Hampshire just barely in 2016 is because there were busloads of voters brought in from Massachusetts. Ask Democrats, ask Republicans, ask anybody in New Hampshire, they will tell you that is ludicrous. Listen to Stephen Miller.
All right, just for the record, you have provided absolutely no evidence. The president has made a statement.
The White House has provided enormous evidence with respect to voter fraud, with respect to people being registered in more than one state, dead people voting, non-citizens being registered to vote. George, it is a fact, and you will not deny it, that there are massive numbers of non-citizens in this country who are registered to vote.
It is not a fact, and it is... Call your Republican Secretary of State. If you're a Trump supporter and you think this is a huge problem, is it a minor problem? Sure. Can we do better in our elections? Sure. Call your Secretary of State. Do this yourself. It's just, but why? Somebody tell me why. He's on the payroll now. You pay him. He's a taxpayer-paid employee standing in the White House briefing room spewing garbage.
Wow. Spewing garbage. And it is garbage. And just like I told you yesterday at the end of the show, I said each state conducts its own election. And so if you think that there's voter fraud, you need to call your Secretary of State. Each state has one. And if you think that dead people voted in your election, then call your Secretary of State and ask and let them tell you, no, it didn't happen. Now, there's a couple of things. I want you to be ready for recess. I told you, your member of Congress will be coming home in about 4 days. Recess is planned for February 18th to the 26th, and your member of Congress just might be having a town hall. Your member of Congress just might be in their local office. You need to mosey on down there and tell them to do their damn job and to investigate this Russian hacking of our election and this Russian interference in our president's life, in our president's foreign policy, in the fact that the Republican National Committee changed their platform to allow Vladimir Putin to invade Ukraine and not to arm Ukraine so that they could fight back against Vlad. I mean, these are life and death things. We have a national security crisis that has been unfolding ever since the GOP platform got changed. And we've been all over it ever since the GOP platform got changed. In fact, it got changed. I think we came back on the air, July 15th. And the 5th. July 5th. And I think the 15th was the day that they changed the platform. And it was like, oh my God, what is really going on with these people? And Paul Manafort, we know the lobbying laws because Howard was a lobbyist for 37 years. And you cannot lobby for a foreign government without being licensed as a foreign agent. And Manafort wasn't. So, we had him until August, and then we had Kellyanne Conway after August. We've known this the whole freaking time. Don't tell me that Pence didn't know. Don't tell me that Trump didn't know. Don't tell me that anybody that was around this, that Kellyanne Conway didn't know, that Reince Priebus didn't know, because the platform was changed. This was a big tip, and Manafort's lobbying without a license was a huge, big red flag to us here at the Randi Rhodes Show. So there's plenty. And I always said, Comey's not done. And I do take a lot of flack for that, but Comey is not done. And now you know why this is so complex. It's because it's national security. It's not just law breaking. Manafort obviously broke the law because he's not registered as a foreign lobbyist for, foreign agent. So he broke the law. So, is he taking the fifth? What's going on? We don't know. But something is going on. All the intel agencies are investigating, all of them, and they have been. And now we know for sure that they have been. The other thing I want to tell you is there is a Representative Bill Pascrell, serves on the Ways and Means Committee. Yeah, he's from New Jersey. He actually found an old law, 1924 law, that gives congressional committees that set tax policy the power to examine tax returns. Do you remember when there was a big thing with what's her face over at the IRS? And they were able to look at tax returns to see whether or not she was lying. She wasn't. But they were able to look at her work at tax return preparation. Lois Lerner. Yeah, that's who I'm thinking of. Thank you. And so they used that 1924 law. They used it in 1974 when they looked at Richard Nixon's taxes. They used it in 2014 when they needed tax information as part of the investigation into Lois Lerner at the IRS. So they have used this law recently, and it can be used to subpoena Trump's tax records to see if he's made money off of Russia, China. You know what I mean? People whose positions in the world he's taking over our allies, like Europe, like that. And so that would be a nice thing to see Congress start doing. That would be a really nice thing. Not that we would see them, okay? They would be seen in private. They would be seen, confidentially. But then if there was anything of interest, they could move to make them public. So I want you to be prepared for recess. I want you to understand where your local office is, and I want you to go. There's nothing like showing up. There is no substitute for showing up. I can phone it in. You know that. I've phoned it in before. But there's nothing like showing up every day. There is no substitute. And I want you to understand that if you're in Bill Pascrell's district, go there. Go to his home district. Go to his New Jersey office and tell him you want him to use that 1924 law. And if your member is on the Ways and Means Committee, I don't care what stripe they are, you tell them you want those tax returns. You want them. We need them. It's a matter of national security. All right, let's wrap it up with Nick in Mississippi.
Hey, how you doing, lady?
Hey.
Okay, first of all, I think when this is over, we're going to have a threefer.
Oh, yeah?
Okay. Yeah, because I think what's going to happen, this going to ensnare Pence, Bannon, as well as Trump. But there's no way that Flynn could do the things he did without there knowing about it. Because if you look at all the pictures, you always see wherever Flynn is at, Bannon is there. Okay? Whenever you see Trump sitting in the Oval Office and Flynn is there, so is Bannon.
Yeah, they're all there. They're all there. And you know what's crazy is Flynn, obviously this was known, and they told us today they've been, they're just, the White House counsel, investigated him. Blah. Meanwhile, Saturday, when North Korea launched a missile at that open-air patio dinner where everybody could take pictures of the freaking documents on the table, Flynn is there. So if you don't trust Flynn, and you haven't trusted him all weekend, why did you bring him to that dinner and allow him to weigh in on what to do about North Korea? None of this makes sense. It's all a stinking lie. But you know what? We'll get a six-fer, not a three-fer. You'll get Pence, you'll get Trump, you'll get Bannon, you'll also get Flynn, you'll get Manafort, and you might get Carter Page, too.
And one bonus.
Yeah.
One bonus.
Who?
That bonus is going to be Mitch McConnell.
Why?
Okay. For the simple reason, remember, he was presented with that with the information. He sat on it. Okay. Now the question becomes: did he sit on it because of national security,
right,
or did he sit on it for political reasons?
Yeah. Well, you can't get inside a man's head now, can you? Especially not that turtle brain. He's got a hard shell on it. But yeah. I appreciate the verve and vigor with which you are following this. I do. Thank you.
Honey.
Thank you, babe. Thanks, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. Oh. Thanks, everybody. Happy Valentine's Day. I read the news today. Oh, boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
He's only been president for 3 weeks, but chaos is running rampant in Dump's White House. Kellyanne Conway, after giving us the new alternative facts lexicon and inventing the Bowling Green massacre, went on the original fake news channel to audition for QVC.
Go buy Ivanka's stuff is what I would tell you. It's a wonderful line. I own some of it. I'm going to give a free commercial here. Go buy it today, everybody. You can find it online.
In his daily White House press briefing on Thursday, spokesman Sean Spicer said
Kellyanne has been counseled, and that's all we're going to go with. She's been counseled on that subject, and that's it.
That came after the fascist carnival barker tweeted, "My daughter Ivanka has been treated so unfairly by Nordstrom. She's a great person, always pushing me to do the right thing. Terrible." Not only was that tweet also sent from the official @POTUS account outrageous, there are questions about when it was sent.
Worrisome thing about Trump's tweet is that it was written at 10:51 a.m., but according to the president's daily schedule, he was supposed to be receiving his daily intelligence briefing at 10:30 a.m. So is Trump skipping out on an intelligence briefing to tweet about his daughter's business? White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer tried to clear things up.
The timing of that tweet, it looked like it was right after President PDB during, can you just...
I've heard the conjecture.